What is up? And welcome to the DLF YouTube channel. We are here to kick off our brand new series for this channel, the DLF Team Preview Series. I am your host for all 32 of these at Calvin and Hobby. You can find me on Twitter at that handle. Make sure you follow me. Make sure you're subscribed to this YouTube channel. And as we go through this journey, we're starting with a very interesting place here in Houston. And to talk about it, I'm going to be inviting on people who are really smart people from the fantasy community who are also fans of that team. So to talk about the Houston Texans as we get this started, we got Miles. He is at FF_Peacock. Miles, tell everybody where they can find you and what you've been working on.
Hey, well, first and foremost, thank you so much, Cal, for having me on the DLF today, or going over the Texans. You're starting with them first, of course, because I bet you think that they're the best, and right, just like everybody out there watching. So, exactly. But yes, unfortunately, I am a fan, and I have been since their inception, way back when. Previously was an Oiler fan, and can't really stand the Cowboys. So I mean, who else could I cheer for? But Houston team. But of course, you can find me on Twitter at FF_Peacock. I do a lot of work for the Rum Boys website, the Rum Boys Fantasy Network. That's rumboys.com with a Z. And I'm the chief editor there, so we put out a lot of articles. I do all the graphic work, intro videos for all the shows, that they have weekly and stuff like that. The big one, of course, is Rum Boys After Dark on Friday nights, and you guys can catch all the drunken, crazy, wild sports talk. And we don't cover just fantasy football, but everything is fair game out there with us. So I appreciate you guys if you would check that out.
I have been on that show, and at some point, I think we were maybe 2.5 hours into it, I realized there is no end point to this thing, and then the after show started after that, and exactly. I think I was on there for about another hour. And my whole goal was to last longer than Dave Klug did, and I succeeded in that. I lasted longer than him, so shout out to Dave. Appreciate you bowing out sooner than I did. But not to talk about that. Here to talk about the Texans, and you mentioned it a little bit there. You were a fan of the Oilers, and the Texans are one of those franchises that it doesn't, not like the Steelers that had this long history, where you would watch games with your dad or something like that. But how did you start? Really becoming a fan of the team? Was it just the location, or what do they ultimately do that kind of brought you into the franchise?
Well, it was more out of like I said, I guess I wasn't a real huge fan of the Dallas Cowboys when Houston was left without a team there for a bit. I felt like I had no other choice but to put it in the face of my friends and my colleagues and basically everybody who surrounded me, and said, I'm going to be a little bit different. I'm going to cheer for, this new team that has, come back to Houston. But when I was a kid, my dad didn't really have a preference as far as teams. So we just watched football together, and I gravitated towards, Warren Moon and Earl Campbell and some of those guys. I know I may not look super old, but I'm in my late 30s. So I did get to see a lot of that stuff when I was very young. And, it just kind of carried over when 2002 rolled around, and we heard the team was coming back to town. I jumped on the opportunity to just, and then we had to endure Carr there as the quarterback as well, yeah. David Carr. But it's been a journey, and I think we reached a peak maybe a few seasons ago, and ever since then it's been this crazy downhill roller coaster of emotions that we call the Houston Texans now.
It's been an interesting last few months, and I mentioned to you before the show. I talked with Chris at Aggie Capasig, who was going to join us. I hope all is well with him. But we had talked about a few months ago, and it was right as the rumors started to swirl a little bit about the Deshaun Watson trade, which that we thought that was terrible for the Texans until it just got worse, the news over and over again. So, obviously it's been talked about to death. We don't have to but for fantasy, it's really important. I'll just pose this question to you. Do you expect to see Deshaun Watson on the field at all in 2021?
Not at all. I'm not even, for fantasy purposes, I'm not even going to take one of those last round flyer things on him. The legal process in this civil case here seems like it's going to continue to be dragged out as far as it can, because neither attorney is going to, give any ground. And so that's why I've heard most recent, rumors are that he could be held out, even possibly past this season and into another season. So I think that the fact that there was rumors about him possibly wanting to go to Denver and then them still having the means to, get that done, I think that's off the table now as well. So he's not somebody that I'm trusting. His ADP is just out the window. You got to wait and see with that. And so I don't think it's worth you to waste a pick in any fantasy format. Maybe dynasty, that's fine. Of course, if he's there and it's late and you want to take a gamble, go ahead, depending on the format. But I wouldn't be trusting him to show up on the field this year.
Yeah, every now and then in off season, something like this comes up, and you just kind of have to throw your arms up and in dynasty, I don't know exactly what the best thing to do. Don't you kind of a hold right now if you have him on one of your rosters. You can't really get very much for him if you were going to trade him, and can't really tell anybody to go trade for him because you just it's
you don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, exactly. So now as I was researching the Texans a little bit, I did come across a news item that he has not yet been interviewed at all by the NFL, according to his attorney. So either they're just waiting for this process to sort of work out in the courts, and if they are, like you said, this could bleed over even into next season. If they, it just seems like at some point some of this stuff has to start coming together, and the NFL has to make a decision, right?
Right. And let's say that the NFL doesn't, lay down the law here and put him on the commissioner's exempt list or what have you. He still doesn't want to play for the Texans. And it's still a risk for other teams to try to trade for him until they know more. So there was an article that came out recently, or I believe Nick Caserio, the general manager, said something to the fact that a decision was going to have to be made before training camp. So maybe we'll see something that comes to light here, right before that happens very soon. But otherwise, once that happens and nothing has changed, I think that that's going to be the motto going forward until the court actually steps in and says something, or the NFL comes in and says, hey, you know what, he's on this exempt list and he's not going to be playing, or whatever it may be.
Well, it wasn't the only change that happened in Houston over the offseason. Obviously, not going to have him, by your estimation, under center. We also have brand new head coach, brand new GM. But the same offensive coordinator, which is interesting. Tim Kelly still in the house, and a lot of reports about the defense. And obviously, we're going to talk a lot about the offense. I don't want to spend too much time on the defense, but Lovie Smith coming in is not a small name, and it's not a small change. And when we think about what we can expect from this team, a lot of pass attempts, things like that. I don't know that I would expect that, especially if they can control the game a little bit better with Lovie Smith. Do you expect them to be better?
I expect the defense to be significantly better. Just because they were so bad last year. If you look at them statistically across the board, I think they were third last against the run. They were just there was a crazy stat that I saw somewhere that they were out of 460 some odd defenses, they were ranked third to last on that list in the last 16 years of defenses that even qualified for that. So that was one of the worst defenses you probably ever see in the league in recent history. I think that they can definitely improve and be better. You have a whole new scheme coming in. You have Lovie Smith and his son, Miles Smith, also, who's going to be there helping the coach. So you have a lot of turnover with the coaching staff, not only just the players. And they brought in, I believe, 8 different linebackers, a lot of free agents. I know that they're not young, spry, spring chickens, but these are guys that are willing to come out here, compete for a starting job, on 1-year contracts and really, fire up the defense. And I think kind of, bring that. And it's a different thing. They're switching from one scheme to something completely different. It's now a cover 2 type deal. They used to run a lot of cover 3. So I think that you're going to see a lot of competition, a lot of guys flying to the ball, and definitely, or hopefully, as a Texans fan, some improvement. Not teams throwing up 35 points and scoring with at will with a minute left in the game. Because the Texans lost a lot of close games in the final minutes last season.
One of the interesting additions, who's not actually a coordinator, but pretty big name, pretty well known, is Pep Hamilton, who comes in and, most recently with the Los Angeles Chargers, and he brings over a quarterback he's very familiar with, and Tyrod Taylor. And another quarterback who he's familiar with is Davis Mills, because he's really close. We talked a little bit about it pregame, but really close with the head coach of Stanford, who he knows back at his days, going back to his connection with Andrew Luck. So talk about that quarterback room a little bit. Jeff Driscoll's in there, but what do you think? Tyrod Taylor, 11-year NFL veteran, who at least you're gonna have some trust in what he's able to do. But you're not. The expectations aren't very big. And talk about him and Davis Mills and what can we expect out of these quarterbacks who wouldn't cost you very much on draft day.
Yeah, I'm really excited for the prospect of Tyrod being one of those fantasy sleepers for you. If you completely punt the position, like somebody like me, I like to take quarterbacks really late. So if I can grab, let's say it's a redraft league, if I can grab Ryan Tannehill in like round 8 or 9 or whatever, and then get Tyrod Taylor's insurance in my last pick, or not even, something, he's not going to be drafted. So that's the thing. He does have the intangibles though. What's going to happen in this offense is Tim Kelly's still going to use probably 5 wide sets with motion, to kind of make that an indicator for Tyrod to read the defense and figure out what kind of coverage they're in, whether it's man or zone, right? Then he's going to, make a quick read, and it's going to be boom, boom, boom. They have Nico Collins. They got some big bodies now. They didn't have that. They had a lot of small receivers, quick guys that would go downfield. That doesn't mean that Tyrod's not going to be able to take shots downfield, because in the one game he played last year against Cincinnati, we saw that he took some shots with Mike Williams down the field. So I'm excited for him. He can scramble. He can extend plays. He can give you some off-script stuff. He's not Deshaun Watson, obviously, but I think that he's caught a lot of bad breaks in his 11-year career. He missed the entire basically the entirety of last season with that punctured lung, which is just a freak accident. He paved the way for Baker Mayfield after an injury when he was there. The same thing in Buffalo with Josh Allen. So perhaps this could be the stepping stone for Davis Mills. Now, Davis Mills, the verdict's still out, and I think I told you a little bit about this pregame, but the verdict is still out for me with Davis Mills. There's not a lot of film on him. He did have a knee injury, I believe, and then COVID kind of cut the season short for him last season. Not that he got COVID, just in general. But he's decent. He's not super athletic. Like I said, he does kind of remind me of Andrew Luck at times. But he's a first read quarterback. So he's going to have to develop under Pep Hamilton. I think we saw Pep Hamilton work wonders with Justin Herbert just a season ago, and he kind of has that track record. So I think that it could be something. And like you said, he had that history. So maybe that is why they kind of went out there and they still felt like they got their guy or a steal in Davis Mills in the 3rd round when they did select him. So I think that his consistency is something that needs to improve. He's going to have to, make those throws. He's going to not have to be late over to his 2nd read. And other than that, though, I think he's decent. He's a smart kid. So I think that he is somebody who could develop, but I think that it's going to have to be Taylor's game this season, at least, to kind of bridge that, make sure that he learns the system and things kind of stay, intact. And that's just the passing game. Hopefully we do see a lot more 12 personnel with the 2 tight ends now that they have Brevin Jordan along with Jordan Akins, and then kind of play that Baltimore style of game that we saw in Baltimore with head coach David Culley, where he was at.
Yeah. So, and that's the connection. We didn't even talk about David Culley, but I've heard just nothing. Everything that I read got me more and more fired up about him. Like, it was kind of a strange hire at the time. I think not a lot of people expected it, but it sounds like he's really made an impact right away in that locker room. And we'll talk about a couple of the guys that he brought over, but this was a comment that just came in from Aaron 1984, or as I've called him a couple times on my Ask DLF show on Tuesday nights, Aaron 1984. Yeah, Davis Mills by week 7. Tyrod literally got punctured by a golf tee last year. Yeah, so such a freak accident. And, but like Davis Mills himself, now, he wasn't a 1st round pick, but he was the first pick that the Texans had. And there was talk leading up to the draft that some teams had a higher grade on him. So you already talked about it a little bit, but do you have like a prediction of by a certain week that he's going to get starts? I mean, you almost feel like you have to figure out what you have before next season, right? That's
a great one for like the office pool, figure out the date that, or the week that Davis Mills takes over as the starting quarterback. I did see, and this is the media, or I guess, big time CBS or, ESPN or NFL Network guys kind of writing these articles, but I I think they predicted by like week 6 or week 7, somewhere around just before. I'm not entirely sure. I don't remember. I don't have the schedule in front of me when the bye week is, but they figure if it doesn't happen right before, then it'll happen after the bye week. They'll make a change and push for their first win of the season. Although I don't see it that way. I think that maybe that everybody's underestimating the team a little bit, and the new personnel and all the new guys kind of coming in and vying for a position and vying for a job and a bigger contract next year. This is a show out year for a lot of these old vets that they stack the roster with. So I think that Nick Caserio kind of, I think he kind of knows what he's doing here. It's kind of a reboot, a reset, and let's go out and be competitive. We're not just going to fold and play for the number 1 draft pick next year. At least that's what I'm hoping as a fan. I don't think that that's going to sell many tickets if you see a stink show out there all next season.
There are running backs by committee, and then there's whatever this is that the Texans have assembled at running back this season. I actually, when I talked to Chris about this a few months ago, we talked about how, I thought it would be awesome for them to bring in Mark Ingram. That was one of the ones that I mentioned because of the connection with Coutee, and because as a Saints fan myself, I saw what he did in the locker room, and I thought that's like there is no better hype man in the world than Mark Ingram, and he actually sounds like he's pretty impressed with Phillip, Lindsay, and some of the other guys there. He talked about David Johnson and doing his normal hype up thing. But what do you think? I mean, a lot of names there. Also Rex Burkhead, I think, is the other one that I didn't mention, and Buddy Howell's still kicking around there. But like, is there any? I don't know if there's any dynasty value to be had in any of these guys, but what about fantasy-wise for 2021? What are you thinking out of those guys?
Yeah, so okay, so Duke Johnson isn't there. I think that's, and I don't like to use the term like vacated targets or carries or whatever like that.
Yeah,
but
Peter Howard literally shows up on the screen and tells you how dumb you are if you say that. Yeah.
So because that's exactly what I'm saying. But you have to bring in other guys. Obviously, I think that the running back room has always been particularly shallow for the Houston Texans, dating back to as long as I can possibly remember, practically. So I think that this is the first time where you have maybe 3 viable options. I mean, maybe Mark Ingram is a little bit past his prime, and David Johnson's just right nipping on his heels. Phillip Lindsay's a few years younger, a little more speed on him, but each of these guys can still run a power running game. Lindsay, despite his stature, he's a solid 190, even though he's 5'8" or whatever it may be, but he hits the hole hard. I don't know if you've ever seen his film, but he can run inside the tackles and still has the speed to take it on an outside zone run or, hit the edge like he likes to do. David Johnson is still a great receiving running back that can split out wide. Mark Ingram, he's bringing in, like you said, for that leadership quality in the locker room, letting the guys kind of know how they like to do it, how David Culley likes to do things as a coach, as his, maybe his number 1 guy here, getting the offense going. Somebody to look to now that Deshaun Watson is no longer in the huddle, bringing that leadership. It's who do you look to in there? So I think that that's one of those guys, or one of his guys that he brought in on purpose, but also for short yardage and maybe some goal line looks. How is this going to affect the running back fantasy wise? Look, the Texans are full of steals, great value, because nobody wants to draft them. So, I mean, at the last possible, moment when the ADP matches where you think that they can go and nobody's still going to take them, they might as well take your shot on David Johnson as your RB3 or RB4 or whatever it may be. He was still viable last season. I think he finishes running back 21, although it wasn't, he did miss a couple games with injuries, but he had a good string there towards the end of the season where he kind of got hot. So they also, one thing that probably hasn't been talked about a lot for the Texans run game is that they got rid of Nick Martin, their old center, and they brought in Justin Britt from the Seattle Seahawks, who's, I believe, a lot better as far as run blocking centers go. I think he's an upgrade at that position. They had a lot of money tied into him, Nick Martin, so they got rid of him, and I think that was a great move. Plus, now they have a lot of depth at all the other positions on the offensive line, because they've never had that before either. So they can kind of shuffle it around, see who plays good where, and finally have a good, solid, starting point. And if somebody goes down, they can plug in somebody, and they won't, be at this thing where Tyrod has to run for his life like Deshaun did a couple seasons ago and got sacked, a league high 63 times. So I think that that's something that's also being overlooked. The entire Baltimore run scheme, the fact that, if you look at the way they are, the way that team is built, they have 3 running backs there. Same thing like San Francisco. Then it's no secret that the Texans want to come out this season and try to run the ball, because they were abysmal last season. So that's something they're going to try to turn around and focus on.
And we are brought to you by dynastyleaguefootball.com. Make sure you go over there. The premium access to that site is truly amazing. And for anybody who tunes in on Tuesday nights, me and Tyler Karp always go through so many of the tools as we're answering questions. And so I've got some ADP pulled up now, and all these.
I was going to say, sorry not to cut you off, but I have some projections because I kind of do team projections as I go along here. I just haven't finished all of them, but like the way that it shakes out is basically, you're going to split Ingram and Lindsay a little bit. They're both going to have maybe like, a handful or less TDs. I think David Johnson's kind of probably match something like he did last season, but not be too flashy or great. He's not going to break 800 rushing yards or anything like that with the other two guys there siphoning carries away, but he's still going to be a good option, I believe, in the passing game and be sneaky there to where he gives you that all-purpose kind of back that he truly is. And they still have a lot of money tied to him as well, so I do think that they're going to feed him the ball.
And, at some point, I guess it's a new regime, but at some point it's like, you're handing them the ball because you traded away DeAndre Hopkins for him, right?
Exactly.
Like, you still carrying that around. And he's, and this is Dynasty League ADP, obviously, but he's going as the RB29, or I'm sorry, RB39. Part of that's because he's 29 years old.
Right.
Phillip Lindsay is, he's a little younger, but he's still 26. There's just, I guess, dynasty wise, there's just not a lot here. Burkhead's 30, Mark Ingram's 31. But
I don't mention Burkhead. I think Burkhead's just insurance, and Caserio knows him and has been familiar with him. They have a few special teams guys, but I think Burkhead will also make his payday there. Or if a game gets out of hand or something, the team starts going another way and you have to trade David Johnson away in the middle of the season or something crazy goes on. So, you have somebody to come in there and still carry the load or be a filler guy. And I think that's what they're kind of looking there for. He's an insurance play for the team, but he's not fantasy viable.
Somebody that gets overlooked a lot, when we started thinking about these wide receivers over and over again, is Brandin Cooks. It seems like every year, no matter who he's playing with, he puts up 1,000 yards, but he's like the opposite of Allen Robinson. Right? Allen Robinson always played with garbage quarterbacks, and Brandin Cooks has never played with anything less than like a Hall of Famer. So all of a sudden now it's like, he's going to have Tyrod Taylor and maybe Davis Mills. Can we expect to have that same high upside that we normally think of when we think of Brandin Cooks?
Well, typically, he, like you said, he gets overlooked. I think I picked him up in a few fantasy drafts last year between rounds, 8, 9, somewhere around that. And I think that's probably where he's going to continue to go. He's kind of like one of those Robert Woods types of guys to me. He's just sneaky good. And the thing is, he doesn't have to, you think of him like on go routes and getting deep downfield, but he doesn't need that to get away from people and score. You can pop a little bubble screen and get him the yards to go. He's so fast. He's very quick that he can, create that yak for himself despite his size, and he's one of those speedy guys, but you don't think about that aspect of his game that much. He's very good in intermediate routes as well. Will Fuller was the deep guy, and last season with Deshaun Watson there. So you think about it though, Watson held the ball a lot and he held on to it for a long period of time, and he'd like to extend plays and do that. I think that Tyrod is a seasoned vet. He's been around there. He can read the defenses a little bit better, I believe, than Watson, or at least quicker. And he's going to get the ball out of his hands fast. And Cooks is that possession receiver. Now they do have Nico Collins, who's going to be a big body that they can pair up on the outside, put him into the slot, do some deep crossing rub routes. I think that this could still work in the Texans' favor. And they have a lot of other receivers that people have forgot about. It's the island of misfit toys at wide receiver for the Houston Texans right now. And in fact, it's the island of misfit toys for the entire Texans roster. But that's the sneaky thing about that. So I think that there's going to be viable options. They're going to have depth, something that roster has probably never, ever had the entire time that I've been a fan of the Houston Texans. So that's why I'm not sleeping on them so much. I think that the offense is going to be able to do stuff. Are they going to be the 4th best passing offense like they were last season? Hell no. They'll probably be somewhere around 18 to 20, whatever, but they're not going to be the worst, I don't think either. They have some good weapons, and I think Brandin Cooks is the only really good viable option if you're going to be drafting him in fantasy. But you just gotta, but you just gotta, hey, where are you drafting him as far as in your roster makeup, right? Is he your wide receiver 3? Perfect. That's awesome. You're getting the wide receiver 1 for a team somewhere. You know what I mean? And if they are down, then they're going to throw a lot, and they're going to throw a lot more than they did last season.
Why does no one ever talk about Keke Coutee? Like, why does he never get brought up? Is he just like, do we just not care about him at all? Like, is there just nothing there? I feel like every time I've like picked him up and like started having high hopes for him, like it's not like he's tearing it up, but I mean he did have double-digit fantasy points like all down the stretch last year.
He's been great. I think if Randall Cobb was not there on the team right now, that he would be going a lot higher, or people would be talking about him a lot more. They'd be considering him being the third wide receiver on the field or whatever it may be. But I think that that's the issue right now. I think that Cobb and Coutee are basically the way to have them projected. They're splitting targets at 70 and 80, and they're both getting about 45 catches, 3 touchdowns apiece, less than 500 yards. So they're eating each other's value right now. Not only that, Keke Coutee was in and out of the coach's favor in the old regime with Bill O'Brien. He was in and out of his doghouse. He fumbled away, or he an interception, but bounced off his hands. They lost a very important divisional game against the Colts. He fumbled another one away into the end zone one time. So little mistakes would cause him to be healthy scratches, and therefore you picked him up on your fantasy team, and then he'd give you 0 points. So you couldn't play him the following week or in a couple of weeks. So the fact that he would do that often with Bill O'Brien was, I think, that his downfall too. Because I mean, I was singing the song, Keke. There was times where I was glad he was on my fantasy roster and that I had started him, but it was a guessing game. You know what I mean? So you don't want to have to look for players like that. You want good, consistent, stable guys. And I think that maybe Nico Collins could be that guy as early as this season, depending on who the quarterback is and how he has chemistry with him.
That's the guy I'm most excited about, certainly from this from this team. I mean, obviously he has the size. His catch
6'4", 215, 220.
Yeah. And the 94th percentile for his catch radius. Like he's got this some of these things, his speed score is 89th percentile. Like he's got a lot of like athletic traits and abilities that you look at and you think like, wow, even though he's not a burner, he's a 4-5 guy, but like he's got these traits that you look at and you say like, okay, I can see it. Like I can see how he develops into somebody that becomes a good fantasy asset at some point.
Yeah, I mean, he's that possession, big body guy that they were lacking on the outside, I think, since before. I mean, Nook Hopkins was by no means this guy's stature, but he was a great big body, sure-handed wide receiver, regardless of the fact. And then before that, they had Andre Johnson. And so this is probably the guy that they're looking at to kind of fill that role for them here in the future. And I think that they showed that because they moved up in the draft to go grab him. And he's the only one who fits that I don't know, that mold for them on the team. So, like I said, 6'4", 220. He did opt out last season, so we didn't see a lot there. Might have been why he kind of fell in the draft. But other than that, I think he runs a 4.4, 5.40. So he's not like a plodding body down the field. He's not a tight end. He can still burn you down the field. And I love what I saw from him in Michigan on film. So I think that was a great, tremendous pick for the Texans there. Regardless, they had very small draft capital. They had, I think, 7 picks to work with to start off. But they traded a few of those away to get, some pieces here that I really liked with Collins, of course, there. I think he was a 5th rounder or something like that. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, exactly. And you mentioned the 5th rounder, which brings us right to that's Brevin Jordan on the tight end. And 5th round, 3rd overall in that round, 147th pick overall. So yeah, they went Davis Mills, Nico Collins, then Brevin Jordan with their first 3 picks, kind of beefing up the offense. And there's also comments in here about how much Tim Kelly loves Jordan Akins and his ability after the catch, things like that. What do you think about the tight ends and, Kahale Warring, that's the other guy that's in that room. Like you said, misfit toys. These aren't guys that you think of. And like, none of these guys have a high ADP, but is there value to be had in any of these guys?
Well, they let go of Jordan Thomas. And I thought he was playing exceptionally well last year, but they ran a lot of plays where they could scheme these tight ends open on little drag routes underneath, and they got the quarterback moving out of the pocket. And I think that they're going to continue to do stuff like that out of a 12 personnel, 2 tight ends, and they're gonna do that particularly with Akins and hopefully with Brevin Jordan as well. I think that he's going to leapfrog Pharaoh Brown. I think that Kahale Warring has been an afterthought in the Texans locker room for a long time now, despite his physical presence and how much everybody wants to hype him up and pump him up. I think I wrote an article like 2 years ago and I was like, just take the guys that are playing now instead of this polished up, prospect, who was buried in the depth chart. So I think that they drafted Brevin Jordan for a reason. He was still on the board. They liked him. He's a great playmaker. He's a good athlete. He has yak. Like that guy, I saw him hurt. Like some of his film is great. He'll hurdle people, dive into the end zone. He has good, accurate, crisp route running. He's not a great pass blocker or run blocker by any means. He's a wide tight end. They got him to go out and catch the ball and make plays, despite how good Jordan Akins is. Now, Jordan Akins is a better blocking tight end here, and that's why I think that they're going to use both of them at the same time in this kind of heavy set two tight end kind of deal. So that's what I would like to see, and then maybe play action with some motion, get those guys rolling out, and you have nice, easy completions for Tyrod, just to pick up the, move the chains, you know what I'm saying? So I think that Brevin Jordan is, the thing with this is you're going to see him kind of both split time. They're going to eat into each other as well. But I do have Brevin Jordan pegged out as like a Jonnu Smith type of athletic guy. They have the same kind of build, same kind of measurements, same kind of stats at the combine and stuff. So I don't think he's quite as good or there yet, but I mean, I think he has way better hands and route running ability than Jonnu. So that's something to watch out for. In Dynasty, I was lucky enough to, with like my last two picks in a rookie startup, get both Nico Collins and Brevin Jordan in a few leagues. So
yeah, both of them are going so late. I think it's one of those things where, like you said, value can present itself in some of these offenses where everybody is just like, oh, I'm all the way out on the Texans. And it's like, well, somebody's going to catch the ball. Somebody's going to have and next
they can't
year,
be that bad, can they?
Yeah.
They're not the Jets yet.
Right. and honestly, like there are just points there where it's like, this offense is not always going to have, and again, I don't hate Tyrod Taylor, but it's not always going to have Tyrod Taylor. If they wind up with a high pick, there's going to be, some good quarterbacks for them to choose from. You got to assume that that's the next move. Then
that's the question right now. It's whether they go with a top end pass rusher for the defensive side or another quarterback prospect, if they are really that terrible this season. You know what I'm saying? Right. And I've heard people say that they could be the first 0-17 team in history or whatever, but I think that's ludicrous. It's not going to happen. The odds of that happening, I think it's like one team does it every 33 years, and the last team that did it was just a few years ago, the Cleveland Browns. So. And they did it a couple of years in a row.
Right. Yeah. And that's one of those things I think we say a lot, in the offseason, and then we see it on the field. And I don't think Lovie Smith's going to allow a defense to be that bad. And I do actually really like Pep Hamilton and his addition to this squad. And I think the coaching staff, and I think you'll see some positives from this team that we're not expecting. I don't know that, I don't know that.
At least we hope.
Yeah. I don't think you're going to have like a league winning type guy that you're going to add to your team from the Texans, but I do think there's value to be had, and like you said, Nico Collins in the third round of your rookie startup, or Brevin Jordan in the fourth, something like that. Like that's you can get good value that way.
Yeah, most definitely. Even Davis Mills, if you're willing to take a shot, or you're in a super flex and you have one quarterback and you have nobody else, and Tyrod is there. I mean, you could pick up Tyrod. He's going to start, and he's going to give you a slight rushing floor. And he's a game manager, but I don't want to put it that way, because he gives you that extra flair. He can do those off script plays. He can break the pocket and extend it and dump it off to a running back or do something like that, And now the Texans do, like I said, have size, a little bit more size with the guys like Nico Collins and Brevin Jordan, who hopefully get to see the field and pick things up quickly.
How hard was it to lose? And this is going away from some of the fantasy stuff. How hard was it to lose JJ Watt this offseason, and what he meant to the city and to the team itself?
I think that was the tougher thing. The fact that he's such a genuine, great guy, good role model for my kids. My kids had jerseys, and my daughter would cry when she couldn't put her jersey on to take it to daycare or whatever. She's going to be 3 in a couple of weeks, but she's she knows who JJ Watt is. You know what I mean? And so that's a big thing when you lose a player like that, and the impact that they have, I guess, in the locker room as well. But I think that the fact that Coach Culley's brought in a lot of these guys, a lot of these leaders, a lot of these vets. And a lot of these guys are here to work, and they're going to work hard, and they're here to prove something, I think. So I think that that's going to transcend to a lot of the rookies and the younger guys, and hopefully start a culture change, regardless of the fact that you still have the same stupid ownership. I mean, you have everything else is new. You have a new GM. You got new coaches everywhere. The only thing that stayed the same was basically the offensive scheme. But other than that, I mean, everything else is new. Everything else is new. We even got competition at long snapper and punter, when those positions were set. They're not joking around. It's whoever's the best coming in here, and we don't care if you were here before or not or whatever, because we're trying to do something new. It's a reset button, and I'm glad it happened.
Yeah.
With or without Deshaun Watson, the team needed to start over. I think that the loss to the Kansas City Chiefs in the playoffs a couple of seasons ago was just such a big hit for the fans in the city, and then they lost DeAndre Hopkins, and then a whole bunch of other things just started happening that it was just time to, rip the Band-Aid off here. And unfortunately, they still have the situation going on with Watson, but I think they've ripped the Band-Aid off in terms of everything else. They cut guys that they had money tied to, and they said, you know what, you're not good enough. We're just bringing in vets. You know what I'm saying? And that felt good, because I've been, as a fan, saying, why the hell is Nick Barton our center? Why did they pay him that much money? And so you brought in somebody, like I said, Justin Britt earlier. You can bring in guys that are better for less money, and you can help the team in other areas and get depth. Like I said, you're not just trying to put guys in position and make them stars when they're not. So I think that that's a big difference. Bill O'Brien is gone. Thank goodness. I loved him as a person. I'm sure he was a really great guy, but as a coach, had me doing this, so many times. And it's tough as a football fan. And I'm sure a lot of fans can relate, because only one team wins a Super Bowl every year, and it's typically not our team. So, as a Texans fan, it's been 20 years. This will be year number 20. And, we're still sniffing outside of divisional championships. So it's a good time to restart while my kids are still young. And I have some life left in me.
Yeah. And it's a cool logo, right? I love the Texans logo. It's one of the cooler logos out there.
Yeah,
we do have some questions coming in here from the chat. So if you're watching this and you have some questions about the Texans or comments that you want to make for the next 5 minutes or so, we will take those. Jazz echoes what we said here. Someone will have to catch the ball there. Hard to be excited about much this year, though. That's kind of aligned with what we said. It does remind me, I wanted to ask you about Isaiah Coulter. That's a guy that I kind of had some high hopes for last year. Has he been getting any buzz or anybody talking about him around town?
Well, not necessarily. I think the fans and people who remember the draft from last year, or maybe even fantasy managers who happen to have him snuck onto their team or just kind of hiding him away or whatever, have been the people who've been most vocal. I haven't heard much out of camp or anything like that he's been impressing. They, like I said, they went ahead and they drafted Nico Collins, and they went for size. I think Isaiah Coulter kind of fit the old mold of just speed kills, which is what they were going for last season, and they kind of did away with that. But they also brought in a lot of other guys that we didn't talk about. Chris Conley, Dante Moncrief, Andre Roberts. Like, they just brought in guys and guys and guys. You want to look at that wide receiver depth chart. Isaiah Coulter, unfortunately, the only thing that he has going for him is the fact that he's young, and but I don't even know if that really helps him, because a lot of these savvy vets can probably teach him a thing or two, and maybe that's where he may benefit this season, having all these veterans come in year 2, and he can still learn a thing. But I don't know. I don't think he's maybe he's a hold if you figure out what happens here and they get out of camp and see where they make cuts. But other than that, I'm not really excited about Isaiah Coulter. I was last season when they drafted him. I think his tape out of Rhode Island looked really good. He can high point the ball and get downfield. So like I said, he's probably the second, he's like the second youngest receiver on the roster. So I don't see why and he's going to be there for another season or two. So I don't see why they would, it just depends on how he does at camp. I think that's something you got to look at. And that's something that I'll probably pay attention to now that you brought it up.
Yeah. Jazz, who was a surprise running back that steps in for DJ, and can Lindsay excel still? I was reading some comments from Phillip Lindsay. He seems to be like a favorite for the beat writers to interview. He seems like he's a good interview. He doesn't sound like somebody that's expecting to see a lot of touches, though. He sounds like somebody who's expecting to try to make the most of the touches that he does get.
Exactly. I don't know where I have it down, because I just kind of did some notes earlier, but I think I had Lindsay pegged for about 150 to 200 total touches if he's lucky, but I'd say somewhere around the 150 mark. And I'm thinking 50 targets and 100 carries is what you're probably looking at. Just nice, solid round numbers for him. Nothing out of the ordinary. Like I said, he's probably going to spell DJ, and then you'll see Ingram come in on, short or two running back type, looks or short yardage or third down, and that he's going to grind and carry. He's 29, but he still has, he still has something left. I think that the fact that he was, they had 2 other rookies that they, in consecutive years in Baltimore that came in front of him was the only reason he looked slow, but they just didn't give him the ball enough out there. So
Yeah, he
I
was
think that
RBH a couple of years ago, right? So I mean, he's got something in the tank there, and
yeah, and Phillip Lindsay 2 years ago as an undrafted, free agent did the same thing, and he did it with minimal carries. So I think that's what Lindsay's trying to do. He's trying to hit a home run every time he comes in and touches the ball. So I think that's going to be really good for the Texans as far as a change of pace. For fantasy though, if you're looking for a touchdown upside and you need RB depth, then yeah, go ahead and pick up Lindsay super late. Like nobody's even drafting him.
No.
So so you could go ahead and pick him up for free. David Johnson going to be great value late. Like I said, if you want to pick him up as a super flex or RB 3 or 4, whatever borderline, and he's still out there, nobody wants to touch him, then pick him up. I mean, he's a starting running back in the league, and you're not going to get that. After he's gone, you're really not going to get that from any other running backs.
There you go. Some SFB 11 targets right there. Let's see.
Get those mock drafts going. I think I'm picking 10, so I've done a couple of mocks there.
Yeah,
that's always fun.
And I'm 11. So
there you go.
In the same neighborhood there. Would you say Cooks is a safe bet for wide receiver 2 numbers this year if healthy?
Oof.
Safe bet?
That would be probably like if he's healthy the full year and he has a consistent quarterback play the entire season, then that's what you're hoping he finishes for. But without Deshaun Watson there, I would be expecting a high-end wide receiver 3 numbers. I think I have him. This is the first year I have Cooks not hitting 1,000 yards, and that's because they're having an extra game this season. So that tells you enough. I mean, and I love Cooks. I wrote an article about Cooks that disappeared from the internet a while back, but it was a great one. It was before he got brought into the Texans, and he brings speed, experience, a good skill set, and the fact that he had a concussion history or whatever shouldn't bother you if you're going to draft him.
Right.
The fact that they don't have Watson this year is going to put a damper on him. But I think if he has, like I said, consistent QB play, then at worst you could hope for high end wide receiver 3 numbers, which is why I said depending on how you drafted, you already have 2 wide receivers and he's still out there, and that's a wide receiver 1 for a team. You can go ahead and scoop him up and feel okay about that.
You mentioned and Collins and Jordan, and look, doing great work. Alex is already moving him up his draft board right here, so certainly that's a good move, Alex. Both those guys. Now you might want to stash them on a taxi squad, or
exactly.
Don't have a lot of. I wouldn't have high expectations for them this year, but they're the kind of guys that I think you want to invest in, because next year this offense could look a lot different. So,
well, you can pay a lot of attention towards the end of the season too, and look at how they're finishing the end of the season and how the Texans have done, and you can see what they're going to probably try to do with them moving on into the future. I think that they'll get a lot of play towards the back end of the season. So even if you don't draft them and they're still out there, you can put a little star on them and pick them up a couple of weeks into the season and see what's going on with them if you don't want to take a shot in the draft. But I mean, I did in a couple of leagues where I knew I was like, hey, I need some depth at these positions. I'm going to put them on a taxi squad, like you said, and see what happens.
Miles, I'm so appreciative of you taking the time to come here and talk Texans with me. And I want to give you one last chance to tell everybody where they can find you and what you're working on this offseason, how we can support what you're doing.
Of course, yeah. Like I said, you can always check us out over at rumboys.com. I'm the chief editor out there. I do a lot of graphic editing and digital artwork and stuff like that, video intros, cuts, and music and things of that nature. So when I do have free time, but I do a lot of writing and editing out there. So go ahead and check out the website, Rumboys with a Z, and you'll scroll down. You can see the Captain's Corner. It has all the articles, and there's a little carousel of videos. It has all our latest videos, and you can check out all the crew. We have like Bogart Scott Free and Herms NFL, and of course Rumboys Robbie, and a whole cast of characters out there who love to talk fantasy sports. So you can obviously find me there. Then of course on Twitter at @FF_Peacock, and I'm just hanging out there. That's where you can probably see most of my graphic art. So go check that out. If you guys have any requests or whatever, my DMs are always open.
Great stuff, and appreciate your insight on this Texans team where, trying to figure out, you're mining, we're digging deep.
Me too.
Out, where's the value here? And, and I think that all that helps. And so for Miles, I'm Calvin and Hobby. We're here at DLF. We're going to do all 32 teams. This is number 1. Make sure you check out all these teams, because we're going to have some really, really great fantasy minds helping us to break this stuff down. And in fact, in about 10 minutes, if you're watching this live, hop over. We're going to be doing the Philadelphia Eagles with some great guests there. So, Miles, I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, everybody that's tuning in, and we'll see you on the next broadcast.